if you want to use dbt to load data into a data warehouse, for example, or something like that, that data warehouse needs full SQL capabilities, like insert, update, delete, merge, that sort of stuff. In Fabric, there's only one tool that can do that, and that is the Fabric warehouse, because it's a dbt warehouse and it should be empty, and it is empty. No tables, nothing. Okay. So let's start with dbt running in dbt running in Visual Studio Code, because that's one of the most popular editors for dbt. Now, dbt is a completely different world compared to graphical tools like integration services or so. dbt works only with files, most of it YAML files. And what you always have is a central so-called dbt project YAML file, of course. Yeah? And this is the example, the so-called folder models. It relates to this particular folder, models. And in dbt, you don't talk about tables, you talk about models, because it could be everything, basically. And what it actually is it a table? Is it a view? Is it, there are even other ways of materializing your stuff. You can switch that here. This says, when I'm talking about the solution called Yaffle Shop, yeah, everything is materialized as a table. Yeah? But under the initial folder here, there's another folder called staging, and the objects in that particular folder are materialized as views. Yeah? So, and if I want to change that at some point, if I say materializing it as views, it is not a good idea. You can just change it here and then deploy everything again, and it will be changed from views to tables. So that's actually very, very easy to do. And then under models, you have the tables that you're actually working with. It's not state here. The real destination tables are customers.sql and orders.sql. These are the two tables that I will import here and part of the Yaffle shop. And if you look inside here, you will find out it's a .sql table, but this is not SQL. It's not SQL because it's Jinja. And Jinja is a bit different, as you can see here. It contains all kinds of relations, in this case, references to definitions from other files, well, file-based. Yeah. It contains definitions. It says, for example, the customers table will be created like this. It will be created using a select star from staging customers. Yeah, this is basically, there's no transformation taking place here, but of course, there are lots of ways to do your transformation. Yeah, but this is simply how it's done. And then, for example, you can see that Jinja, I have some examples later on, can do a lot more than just SQL. That Jinja is very, very similar to SQL. It has a very similar syntax, but it has different stuff. Like, for example, here, you define an array called payment methods, where you store all the payment methods that you might later on use in the rest of your Jinja statement. Yeah? I'll show you some example of this. Okay. So once you defined all the files correctly, of course, everything is very, very easy. All you have to do is you go to the terminal and you, first of all, a bit weird, okay. You do dbt debug to check if everything is okay. Yeah, because of course, for all these files that point to each other, it's easy to make mistakes. Yeah? dbt will check that. And actually has a few very friendly output versions. It checks the Python version of dbt, operating system. It warns me about deprecated functionality.
Python-based in the background.
Yeah, it's all Python-based. And there you go. Ah, okay. It checked a lot of stuff here already, and it says, not finished yet. This is the typical example. And as I said, it can only work on data in SQL. So I need this data somehow, yeah, to be able to run the example. And what the idea, all text path, great, yeah. That's it. And of course, if I look up here, you get all kinds of output, which one was successful or not. The great thing about it is if I need some data just for testing, I can use a so-called seed. They have a subfolder, again, called seeds. And in that subfolder, they have CSV files. Yeah? And don't use this for your everyday data import. This is only for testing. Or if you have some standing data that you only need once, for example, you can put it in here and then load it from there. But that's not what it's made for. But I don't have this raw data in my database. So I'm starting with dbt seed. And then it will check. There's a subfolder called seeds. What are the files in there? It looks at the definitions and it checks what it had to create, what it has to do.
And the seed kind of major sample data? Or?
Yeah, this is just sample data for the Jaffa shop. And that's what you should use it for. I mean, as I said, only this and only very rare, small amounts of standing data, which might be useful. You can take them in with your project together, and then everyone can work on it and so on. Come on.
So you see, the good thing about dbt is the blazing speed.
Yeah, right. Well, this is normally built to be scheduled at night, so they don't use it.
That's a database.
Absolutely. And you can see here, it's actually using several threads and run here. It's using 4 threads. I could have configured it to use more threads, then it would be running in parallel, like the seed files, and it inserted all this stuff, and there you go. Yeah. So now I should have the tables created, and I should have raw data in here. Let's do a refresh. All created using simple SQL syntax together with the data types and so on. Good morning. Still refreshing. There we go. Raw customers, raw orders, raw payments. So they got that. And the idea here is we have information about customers. And we also have their orders, and we have some payments that they made. And as it is typical for BI projects, for example, the table payments will never actually be used later on in the data warehouse, but they are, for example, summing up payments that came from one individual customer and then say, this is the current sum that the customer has paid, like the customer lifetime value, something like that. Yeah, and that's not more or less a typical ETL operation, something that can be easily done with dbt. So that was dbt seed. So I'm finished with that. I got my data view, and then I can basically just do dbt run, and that would be it. I think for some reason it didn't finish before that. Ah, no, it did. Okay, warning me about my deprecated functionality again.
And run is for everything. Like the data is moving
from the staging area or whatever source area you have defined. It's moving from there. It is, as you can see here, it's creating the destination table. Yeah. If you do any changes on the structure in the files here, it will create a new version of the table. And now it's finished. Yeah. It's running 2 table models, 3 view models, blah, 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 and so on. So the idea, that's the way that dbt loves to do it. You can do it otherwise, is you need to have the data somewhere in SQL. It first starts by creating a staging view on top of that, yeah, as a layer between the underlying table and wherever you get it from. You first get a view, and then it's doing an insert from a select into the destination table. It will also actually do a merge or so, but that's normally what it does. Okay, and now once it is finished, what should we have here? We should have a few more tables. Yeah, we have customers and orders. Yeah, and for example, in the customers, we have something like, as I said, here this is the most recent order and the first order ever done by the customer, the number of orders, and so on. These are all things that will be queried by DBT. I defined that it should query this and write the result into the customer's table. Yeah? And that's simple because you can just use SQL to do it, or you will most likely use Ginger to do it. Yeah? And it's doing the same with orders. As I said, it starts with views. You know, it created these 3 staging views. There is a staging view that's simply like select star from blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You might do, for example, some data type conversations here, which might be helpful. And then based on the staging views, it's running to write data into the final tables. Yeah, and that's it.